Welcome to the Halo Effect, hospitality stories with Ashleigh and Michael Donald.
With over 40 years working in the hospitality industry, we've lived some incredible experiences, and as a husband and wife team, we continue to forge our path through business and life that continues to present challenges and opportunities. Through this podcast, we would like to share these experiences and provide some behind-the-scenes insights into the world of hospitality and entrepreneurship.
We hope that this will help anyone who is on a similar journey by sharing how we forged our own path through this incredibly rewarding, yet often challenging industry.
Welcome to this episode of The Halo Effect, Hospitality Stories with Ashleigh and Michael Donald. Today we'll be discussing all things dynamic pricing. We've recently seen a lot of discussion and, in fairness, scrutiny of dynamic and surge pricing, spurred on by events such as the Oasis reunion ticket pricing and hotel pricing strategies during mega events like the Taylor Swift Eras Tour. As always, I'm joined by Michael. Hi,
Hello.
Mike. How are you?
Very well.
Good. So, why not have you kick us off with what is dynamic pricing?
Well, there's a few different ways I suppose you can look at it, but I think it's probably best to look at it from a hotel perspective to start off with. I think in the past, hotels would have always sort of had a set price for their rooms. There wasn't much flexibility on that. It was the price.
Printed rack rate brochures.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, printed well in advance, so you needed to kind of stick with it, and you probably had something sitting on the desk saying this is the price per room per night. And of course, there's lots of businesses that still do that. But as things got a little bit more advanced and supply and demand dictated they needed to try and fill in quieter days, it made sense to drop rates. And maybe if the demand was particularly high, they might put up their rates a little bit as well. That has become more and more technology driven.
Yeah.
And there's lots of different tools that revenue manage hotels and their rate strategies. But still, they are sometimes done manually as well, and we know how much technology people can see what the competitors are doing. Tools like STR predict what rates are going to be in the future, and a lot of people will follow those to dynamically set their prices for particular times.
Yeah, and absolutely, you mentioned revenue management there, and I think that's been such a key role that has developed and evolved in certainly in our careers in the hospitality sector. Mm-hmm. And while there are multiple tools, as you say, that have pricing algorithms and various forecasting tools, I think the ability of a really savvy revenue manager in any hotel, any business that has dynamic pricing is really key. Mm-hmm. With obviously the furore, let's say, around the Oasis pricing, which I think we had some personal experience with that. We've heard a couple of different descriptions of pricing. So there's dynamic pricing and surge pricing, but can you just maybe give us a quick synopsis of I suppose the key differences between surge pricing and dynamic pricing?
I don't know about you, but the first time I came across surge pricing would have been kind of through Uber, I suppose.
Yeah.
And it made sense, really. I mean, I felt a bit ripped off at the time, but I think the ideal was to kind of try and get more drivers out on the street, so they would increase the prices to create more supply for the demand that was there at a particular time. So surge pricing is very much about increasing prices off a sort of a base rate, whereas dynamic pricing, I think, is more. It goes both ways. It reduces prices as well as increases prices.
Yeah,
but I think with that particular example recently, with the Oasis tickets, I think when everyone's sitting in a 250,000 or 1 million people sitting in a queue waiting for their prices to come up, and then it's a total surprise to see that things are more expensive than they were. I mean, we were very lucky. We were in the queue on a few different devices across a few different tabs across all of the gigs. We managed to get some. I think we ended up having to buy a ticket that included a bus journey, which isn't really surge pricing or dynamic pricing. That was the price, and it was just a bit more than we expected. But
that
it
was
offered
the only
more
ticket that we could actually get once we got through,
exactly.
Wasn't it? So it was the sort of bundle price, wasn't it?
But then we were trying to help friends get tickets, and that's where we came across the dynamic pricing. No, I think it's more. I think that was surge pricing. Really is probably the best example, and tickets were twice as expensive as they were originally advertised for, and a few choice words were shared, some words that Liam Gallagher himself would be proud to use. But I think it caused a lot of annoyance to Oasis fans. Whether they're bothered or not is another thing, and there's probably enough time between now and the gigs that will get sort of a little bit forgotten about as people pay off their credit card bills, etc. But it's I think
it was the
thing.
lack of transparency in that particular example with Oasis, I think, is what seems to be the really frustration of people that have since come out to comment. And I think because it was expected to sell out, that surge pricing in such a short space of time for something that they knew would sell out just really kind of cut deep, I think, with many people. So and actually it's been interesting to see how that's driven the conversation around this kind of pricing strategy. But as we've said, dynamic pricing has been around for a number of years, certainly in hotels, and it's also not new to other industries as well. So I'm sure many people will have come across it in the context of air travel, of train travel, retail, Amazon, and again, just related to the demand and the supply.
School holidays are the big one, aren't they?
Well, absolutely. And I think there's, a lot of conversations around parents saying, well, actually, because of the increase in pricing during school holidays, I either have a decision to take my kids out of school during term time to go on holiday, or we just don't go on holiday, and that's the choice. And of course, there's various fines and deterrents in place now, but for some people, that is actually the only choice. So it's a controversial issue, and I suppose from our perspective, from within the industry, we can really understand and see the opportunities of both giving people great prices where there's period of lower demands, and maximising the opportunity when there is more interest to stay. But it's a fine balance, definitely, and I think being transparent is for me the key thing here. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's really important that businesses make hay at those peak times. I think, but once it's transparent and it's the same every year, then that kind of makes sense, and people have choices. They can travel at different times. Obviously, you might have to pay a fine with a local authority to take kids out of school, but even that is still a choice. And it does have a big impact.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, ultimately when you are setting those prices and considering whether you're going to add a real increment to a price, if there's maybe a big gig, there's, a big event that's taking place in your city or in your local area, I suppose it's about the short-term gain of how much revenue you will create during those few days that particular event is on across, your annual revenue versus what that could potentially do to your reputation, which is a lot harder to come back from. And, we did see some examples of hotels that were reported to have cancelled people's rooms, and then rooms were then resold later for 3 times the price. And that does leave a bitter taste, and that won't be forgotten easily. So I think, there's definitely a sort of ethics code around it. But again, it's a fine balance. So we've spoken about Oasis, and I suppose prior to the Oasis ticket kind of controversy, let's say, we've also had the Taylor Swift Eras Tour, which has taken place across multiple cities throughout Europe. And it's fair to say we've seen a huge impact in the local economy. Hotels, if we just look at the UK, hotels in Liverpool and Edinburgh have benefited the most and reported nearly doubling ADR and occupancy around that time, which were figures that CoStar had put out. but yeah, the whole Swiftonomics phenomenon.
Swiftonomics.
It's been really interesting. A few of our clients, they've also written some really interesting blogs about it, and it has had a really positive impact. And actually, Taylor Swift did decline the opportunity to put dynamic pricing onto her ticket sales, so her tickets were sold at the same price. But obviously, from a sort of wider perspective, hotels, airlines, all the kind of infrastructure that comes with putting on those gigs, the hotels have done very well out of her coming. But I think there's I've not seen too many sort of controversies around that. I think people sort of priced fairly in line with the demand, but not there wasn't any kind of crazy stories, I think, that came from that.
Well, of course, it's Taylor Swift. She got to look after reputation. There's a little, there's one for you, Ash, there, reputation. But it's, I think there's an element of value as well. I think I think Taylor Swift is a great example of someone who has an incredible relationship with her fans, and always sort of quite open and trying to offer value to her fans, and because of the authenticity of that relationship, she can still get people to buy re-recordings of an album that are very, very similar to something they probably already have.
Yeah.
But if that relationship is there and that value is there and the fans want to be a part of it, that is a really, really powerful way of communicating with your fans. And whereas she's still doing very, very well for herself, but there's always great examples of her donating huge amounts of money to homelessness charities and food banks, etc., in all of the cities she traveled in. So it's not just about the money. But that economy is sort of building into something that sort of adds to the whole experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, as you say, the Swifties are exceptionally loyal, and rightly so. She's really authentic and really established that trust with her fans.
Whereas I think Liam Gallagher was sort of quoted as saying, well,
oh yeah,
F the lot of you, I'll take the tickets back. We didn't want you there anyway. For all the people who complained about prices
there
going up.
So I suppose we've touched on what dynamic pricing is and some examples, particularly around some kind of mega events, concerts. But overall, the pros and cons of dynamic pricing, as we said, that hotels can flex their pricing or airlines, trains, etc. So it really does allow that revenue optimization, but it can benefit the users as well as the businesses. So when I think about even buying theatre tickets for the pantomime for upcoming kind of festive shows, again, an example of dynamic pricing there is you've got your discounts for students, for kids, for pensioners. And so again, it feels like there's that kind of fairness around pricing.
Yeah, sometimes a discount on a Wednesday night or a Wednesday afternoon or something, and it's just a lot more accessible.
Yeah, so it can help people, as you say, to access. And if you're willing to go out of a peak period, then you can enjoy a discount. So it can be beneficial both for the consumer, the guest, as well as the business. And from a hotel's perspective, we talk about perishable inventory, don't we? And all it means is essentially that room is there and it can't ever be resold on that day. So it's a lost opportunity, it's lost revenue. So if you can price it in a way that still allows you to have some degree of profitability, you still have some really fixed costs that you need to cover, then potentially it can be better to sell that room for a lower rate, and that could be maybe through a more of an opaque channel, so you're maintaining your integrity around pricing, or it could be more to a membership that you've curated, so it's very much as an exclusive for them, as a reward for their loyalty, that they have access to this. it's not, widely distributed through other channels. So, there's some really clever tactics that you can use that still allows you to flex your pricing, but still offers that sense of value, and keeps your kind of guest loyal, as it were. But yeah, I think, I suppose from a guest or consumer perspective, we tend to have that frustration when it doesn't seem to correlate with the value. And again, I think that's around the transparency. So, if I want to, I don't know, fly on a Saturday, it's going to be more expensive than flying on a Tuesday. It's just, and, when I do lots of train travel up and down to London, and I know exactly which trains are going to offer me the best value. It's usually
which might not be the cheapest as well.
Yeah, well, that's it. And as well, for me, it's valuable for me to be in London by 9 a.m. because I can have a full day of meetings. But actually, if I travel a couple of hours later, I can save, nearly 100 quid sometimes. So,
but you might miss all your meetings.
Yeah, exactly. So it just, I suppose, comes back to you're happy to pay a premium if it's going to deliver more value from whatever your personal circumstances are at that time.
So do you think it's going to keep on going? Do you think is dynamic pricing going to evolve more? How is it going to change in the future? Is surge pricing going to continue?
I think there's going to be a bit of a reset around the surge pricing. I think dynamic pricing is here, and it's here to stay in whatever form that evolves to. But I think with surge pricing, and there's been a little bit of a kind of backlash and investigation by the UK Competition and Markets Authority. So, for example, with Oasis, they're now looking into whether Ticketmaster have actually breached consumer protection law, which I know they've come out very strongly to say that they believe that they are working absolutely within the law. So I think there's definitely a grey area which needs to be reviewed, and from a sort of consumer protection perspective, it needs to be clearer to people what they're doing. And to your example there of us waiting in that queue, and eventually we counting down our position in the queue, and we got in, and then it was like still a complete bun fight in terms of what tickets we could get. And then when we got back in to try and buy our friends tickets, the price had trebled. And they just said, no, we're not willing to pay that. That's ridiculous. So there is absolutely that ceiling that you're just pushing it too far.
Whereas they may have paid it if they'd known that was the price going in.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Because a week before, we didn't even know what the prices were going to be, but everyone wanted to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think, you're not like mentally prepared to pay £400 for a concert, really, are you? But I think in terms of dynamic pricing, it'd be really interesting to see how maybe more of a personalised take on it based on past behaviour and what users have been looking at on other places of the websites, across the internet, and perhaps more of a personalised approach and more around adding value. So there's a lot of great examples of where you're retargeting people when perhaps they've visited your website and a few other websites, and when they come back to your website, it's recognised that they're returning, and you then are able to offer them a really personalised added value incentive for them to convert their booking. So I think, and I hope that there's more valuable suggestions around personalising and enhancing people's experiences to get them to book, rather than it just being about the price. And I think that's where I would like to see it go. And there's been some amazing steps forward in that, but for me it's more around that hyper personalisation of what you are looking for in terms of an experience, and how the information can be then served to you in a way that resonates with you and creates that emotional connection to book.
Yeah. I think there's definitely an element of everything needing to be fair.
Yeah,
certainly. I think that's there, but there's definitely opportunities to tailor packages and offers more and more, because lots of people you sort of see the popularity of these sort of select service brands, obviously, and they don't have a lot other than a bedroom and a bed and a comfortable bed going along with it. Whereas other people would not want to do that at all and want a more luxurious experience and all of the bells and whistles. And just finding ways of adapting that to individuals and really personalizing. And that could potentially be in the same hotel. It could be in, I mean, obviously we talk about different brands, but potentially there's a future where it could be to individual hotels where you could get that level of segmentation down to really personalize things.
Yeah, and I mean, if you think about, the way that I often try to look at the retail industry, because I think their personalization of the experience and serving content that resonates is really far ahead in comparison with the hospitality industry. So when you go on a hotel website, generally speaking, it's the same hotel website. If you're looking at it, I'm looking at it, my parents are looking at it, and we've all perhaps got different motivations for being there or different experiences that would resonate really well with us. And whereas when we're shopping online from a retail perspective, everything's so personalized to your maybe past search history or things that you've got in your basket that it recommends other things to you. And I think we are making steps in the right direction, but I agree that we work with a number of hotels, and I suppose we see a lot of your classic packages, whether it's your like tiered wedding packages of gold, silver, bronze, whether it's your standard romantic getaway package. And whilst I think those are great to provide a structure and a framework to give people a starting point to then maybe customize further, I think the future is very much around that personalization and giving a lot of choice back to the customer, but providing that inspiration as well to really see what's possible from their perspective. So it's really interesting, and I think it's great that this conversation is out in the public domain. And I suppose the whole thing of dynamic pricing, it probably wasn't really that interesting to talk about before. And now, since Oasis and Taylor Swift, we've suddenly, I think it's very much been widely reported across various news outlets. So I think it's great to push for more fair and transparent pricing generally for customers and guests across the industry. But also it means that hotels and businesses can learn more about how they can use it to benefit their businesses as well, and offer people great value and great lead-in prices when they need to drum up more demand, and equally benefit in periods of high demand. And you'll often see rewards for booking in advance as well. So I think, particularly since COVID, there's been a real shift of people's booking windows shortening because they've just wanted to have that flexibility of, just checking that, they don't need to do COVID tests before they travel, or just having that, I'll just decide a little bit closer to the time. I might not book it in advance just in case something happens. Whereas I think through pricing, you can encourage people to book further in advance. You see those advanced purchase rates that offer 20% discount if you book and pay for at that time, which helps with hotels.
The biggest change in the last few years is that those prepaid rates have become there's a little bit of flexibility in them as well. Maybe not you get money back, but there's a little bit more flexibility on changing the date.
Yeah, which I think is good to recognise that, absolutely.
Big help for people. I think that's sort of taken a little barrier away from a lot of people. I think what's so crucial with and we talked about it in terms of transparency, I think it's that element of trust. With hotels in particular, I think people, because they're asleep in a room in a hotel, there's a lot of trust put on that we put on hotels when we stay with them in terms of safety of our family, safety of our friends, absolutely. Who it is we are. So I think everything we communicate and everything that we do, including dynamic pricing, we need to remember that we are caretakers of guests' trust, and as we know, as the old saying, trust is earned in drops but lost in buckets, and I think hotels can't really survive if they were to have situations like Ticketmaster or Oasis and surge pricing and that kind of thing. I think that's really damaging to reputations and trust. So I think hotels need to be extra careful of those kind of things when they make those sort of decisions.
Yeah.
And thinking about the long term.
And think about, exactly that long term and that short term quick win won't stand you in good stead for that reputation and protecting yourself long term. So it's really interesting, and I think it's going to continue to evolve.
Thank you for listening to The Halo Effect, Hospitality Stories with Ashleigh and Michael Donald.
Hope that this has helped fellow hospitality people and entrepreneurs who may be on a similar journey.
If you would like to suggest any topics for future episodes, ask us a question, or would like to join us on a future episode of the podcast, then please get in touch. We've linked up our contact details in the show notes.
Don't forget to like and subscribe or follow The Halo Effect on whatever platform you listen to your podcasts. We look forward to welcoming you back to the next episode of The Halo Effect, Hospitality Stories with Ashleigh and Michael Donald.